Story 1. When I realized that everyone I came into contact with would eventually hate me, I used to blame them, but honestly, it is me. I am the bad guy. I need to get my act together. Story 2. Just looking back at my relationships and seeing a pattern forming, then boom, I am the bad guy. I used to be a piece of shit, let them down, unload my problems on them without helping them back, and so on. Since then, I've started seeing a psychologist and working on myself. Of course, I still need a lot of work, but things are getting better. We are all villains in someone else's story. Story 3. I have zero friends. Lonely as hell. Not one person from high school wanted to remain friends. Took me a long time to realize that I'm a jerk. Also, all my exes thought I was a jerk as well. Update. I didn't realize so many people connected with this. I spent the past few years reflecting, and as unoriginal as this might be, the problem lay in me not respecting or thinking well of myself. I work on changing that every day. And most importantly, I love my immediate family. Beyond that, if people want to be friends, I'm happy to engage, but now I love myself and treat my family well first. This has helped me greatly. Not sure where I'll be 5 years from now. Story 4. After I graduated high school, slowly but surely, each of my closest friends began dropping off my radar as soon as I left my hometown. For a while, I thought they were the problem, but after a hard look in the mirror and a lot of reflection, I came to realize that I was an actual bully in high school. I was really mean to a lot of kids who didn't deserve it at all, including my old friends. I've since done rounds of apologies, not expecting forgiveness or repaired relationships by any means, just wanted to right some wrongs, but it's changed my whole perspective on who I was growing up and who other people remember me to be. I appreciate the awards, guys. Thank you. I've gotten some questions about how those people responded to my apologies. Thankfully, I've never had someone respond with bitterness or resentment. Everyone has been pretty kind, and some told me they never saw me as a bully in the first place. I guess we're all our own worst critics, but I wouldn't treat people today like I did all those years ago for $1 million. Even if they weren't able to see it at the time, they still deserved my apology. Story 5. When I abandoned my 12-year-old son overnight during the worst thunderstorm of the year, went out to drink, got arrested, and was bailed out mercifully at 10 a.m. by a stranger. I returned home to find that my good friend had come to my rescue and was taking care of my son. At 6 a.m., when he could not find me, he freaked out, not knowing where I was. This was 9 years ago. I got sober, for keeps, and am still here 9 years later, 10 in October. It took at least 30-day chips for me to get any decent amount of time behind me. Never give up. Never ever give up. Story 6. When my mom told me to be careful about people who could get me to do drugs, I had flashbacks of each and every single person I introduced to different substances, from tobacco to lysergic acid diethylamide. I felt like Heisenberg saying, "I am the one who knocks." Story 7. One New Year's Eve in college. This girl invited all of my friends to her New Year's Eve party, but not me. Assuming it was an oversight, I showed up with my friends. Upon arrival, she immediately looked at me, said, "Who invited him?" and proceeded to ignore me all night. I ended up getting blackout drunk, during which time I've since been told that I groped a female friend, threw up all over the host's bathroom, threw up on myself, and then spent the rest of the night in my underwear and jacket, passed out in a corner. For years, I justified being a drunk because that girl was rude to me. Only after I quit drinking did I realize that she was probably justified in not wanting me there, because I very clearly had a binge drinking problem. Story 8. When I told a young child that feelings are not important, outcomes are, and that I expected him to perform at a higher level, I was told by a friend later that day that I was a stone-hearted monster. I had to let that sink in. Story 9. This might not fit perfectly here, but being unkind to my parents as a teenager. I know basically all teenagers are unkind to their parents sometimes, but now I'm 33, and after turning 20, I started to realize how sweet, caring, and loving my parents are, and how insanely lucky I am to have them, and how much I took that for granted. I regret that I had to become an adult to realize that, because it leaves me with less time with them. I've gotten much closer to them over the years, and I feel like my love for them is constantly growing. I just spent 2 weeks with them for Christmas and New Year, but I have to go back to where I live tomorrow, and I already miss them. Mom, Dad, I love you. Story 10. An old coworker called me out one day for being a troublemaker. I was always in the middle of the drama, encouraging people and spreading gossip, thinking I was being funny, when in fact I was completely oblivious to all the tension I was causing. I took a real hard look at myself for that, and I hope I've gotten better, but I still catch myself making the same mistakes to this day. Story 11. I'm a big guy with a very outgoing personality. I joke with my friends and acquaintances regularly. One day, this guy must have had enough of my joking and called me a bully, and said others thought the same but never said anything because I'm intimidating. I've never intentionally meant to hurt anyone's feelings, but it was a nice wake-up call to check myself. Story 12. I had a short time in my life where I was addicted to drugs. I stole from every single person I came across. I used to always justify myself by saying I was their bad karma, until I got clean and realized I was the worst person I could ever have met. Story 13. When my ex finally left me, I realized how toxic and manipulative I had become. I saw that I was just becoming my father and was basically doing everything he was doing to me, to my ex. Projecting, I guess you'd call it. But I also had some bad depression and anxiety, and that, coupled with insecurity and drug addiction, just kind of ruined my whole personality. Once she left me, I realized how little I was left with. Things are a lot better now, but I always feel so ashamed to think about myself back then. Story 14. I used to be very particular about spelling and grammar online until my dad joined Facebook, and I realized he sometimes gets things a little wrong. I didn't want him to feel bad, and then I realized I'm being a jerk. We all make mistakes, and poking fun at other people's mistakes or even dyslexia makes you unkind. Story 15. Being almost 28 and not having had one intimate relationship with a woman. I don't think I'm bad, but I do have to find out what I'm doing to push women away. Story 16. I've had two, really. Once when I realized that I'm the reason my acquaintances never transition into friendships because I don't maintain them, and once when I was in my senior year of high school. I made some half-joke comment about slacking off, and a girl in the conversation turned to me and said disgustedly, "Oh, you're one of those people." And for a moment I thought, oh, maybe I am. Story 17. One day I made fun of a girl on the bus who was having a hard time already as it was. I did it without thought. I wasn't flirting, just being mean. It wasn't even funny, mostly cruel. This girl then proceeded to beat me up. It was beautiful, horrifying, and well-deserved. I feel sick even thinking I was ever someone's bully, even for a day. But I'm proud of her for what she did for herself and what she did for me. I hope you are thriving out there. Story 18. Being in the military and seeing people whose homes and lives were destroyed by us. Instead of helping or offering compensation, we just left them. I'm not surprised that the insurgency happened. Story 19. After I started realizing my edgy and dark humor, which was just blatantly sexist, homophobic, racist, and all-around disrespectful jokes, can actually hurt people, I started to realize this after having long and deep conversations with some of my friends and realizing I had, in fact, hurt them with these jokes in the past. It's been a struggle to suppress that part of me, but I've been more positive and feel like a better person because of it. Story 20. Someone asked if I was being nice because I felt that entitled me to sex. And if I respect women, why don't I respect their sexual autonomy? If all I want is sex, why am I asking for a relationship? And if my interest is romantic, why am I saying I'm a friend? It opened my eyes to a lot of toxic behavior I had, and I thought I was being such a nice guy. I'm still polite and respectful to women. I'm just honest with them about how I feel personally. Not only did it fix my dating drought back then, it's the reason I am in a good marriage today. Story 21. When I rejected a girl who had a crush on me in a harsh way, I even said to her that I was going to talk to her family about it. I was blind, telling myself that this was the best way to deal with her because she was annoying. I was wrong. When I got rejected by another girl in the same way, it hurt me a lot. That's when I realized that maybe I was the bad guy after all. People kept saying to me that my words were always too harsh, even my family. Story 22. Nearly 5 years ago, my heart was shattered by someone I got too comfortable with. She knew the right words to say, and I got attached. A few months later, I matched with someone on Tinder. We dated for several months, but I quickly realized my fault. I was dating her to have sex with her basically every time we met up, just to get over the other girl. I felt like a coward and an asshole for breaking up with her over the phone. Story 23. When I realized that some comments or words that I used to say deeply offended some people, specifically women, I used to think that if you got offended by some words, then you were just silly, that words don't have meaning if you don't assign them one. Indeed, I was very wrong. Happy to say, though, that I don't say such words anymore. Story 24. When I realized I am not good at keeping up connections with my friends, I am pretty introverted and am entertained by myself, so I don't feel the need to be surrounded by friends all the time or nearly ever. I love my close friends, though, but I feel like we're falling apart year by year. Story 25. When I saw a tab opened on my girlfriend's phone saying, "How to prevent countless pointless arguments," that's when I realized I need to work on it, and badly. I'm happy to say it's fixed, and we are so much better. Story 26. Standing on a sidewalk and listening to children screaming after learning that their father had just died, and having my editor tell me to knock on the door anyway. Forget that. Lied that they declined to comment. Reporters can do good. But the demands of a daily news cycle lead to poor decision-making by editors and reporters regarding what qualifies as news. When someone somewhere is mad about something popular and writes it on Twitter, it's like editors think they just discovered the Nixon tapes. Did you see that a user hates the new Star Wars movie because they said it is offensive to blank? See if you can get any activists on the phone to turn it into something. People would read that. Yeah, they might read it, but should they? It's foolish things like that turn me off news completely. I spent 20 years as a reporter. I'm disgusted and done. Story 27. In 2000-something, I was a conservative. I voted down ballot a lot for Republicans because my family did. Then I moved to California for work. Then I lost my job through no fault of my own. In order to survive, I had to use what my family called socialism programs until I found a new job. My wife and kids needed these services like Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, Keep Your Home California, and Women, Infants, and Children. I felt ashamed at first but rationalized that I had paid into them for years, so it was okay for me to use them. Yes, I was a hypocrite. After 6 months, I found a new job and came off the services and realized that these programs saved my life. I realized how important they are now, and voting against them by voting conservative was wrong. This got me researching and realizing that not everything is socialism, and I am now leaning more liberal but just consider myself independent and vote based on issues and not party lines. I also don't watch Fox News anymore, so I am much less fearful and happier about life. Thank you, California, for saving my life and making me a happier person overall. Story 28. That I was repeating the same behavior as my narcissistic parents. My low self-esteem and fear of rejection were causing me to strike first and devalue or belittle people that I love. I wasn't showing those people the respect they deserve, and it was causing rifts in my relationships. I've since decided to never speak ill of anyone I care about ever again. I was the problem, and I was talking badly about people who didn't deserve it. Realizing you're the problem is a real disappointment, but I've tried to acknowledge my negative behavior and let people know that I understand if they want to cut ties and that I now understand how poorly I was treating them. Story 29. Oh man. Okay, time for a non-romantic story. Back in the days of Microsoft Network Messenger, in my last year of high school, as a prank, I led the entire class into catfishing this guy who nobody liked. He was obnoxious and sexist, but in retrospect, very clearly not deserving of what I put him through. It was the week leading up to Valentine's Day, and I wrote a love note in the handwriting of a girl I knew he liked, and who I also knew had made it clear didn't like him back. I gave him a fake email address in the note and told him to add me on Microsoft Network Messenger and we can chat to let bygones be bygones. Valentine's Day was on Monday. Through the weekend, I reeled this guy in online until he spilled his deepest, darkest secrets and fears to me. And while I was impersonating the girl with him in one chat window, I had the entire class in a group chat in a second window and was pasting the conversation to them live. I convinced him to meet me in an empty classroom on Monday and hinted what kind of chocolates I liked. He walked into the classroom and a minute later, we swarmed in and started laughing at him. There were perhaps 15 of us. As far as I know, he still doesn't know who was the one actually chatting with him. He actually considered me a friend in the time I knew him. For the rest of the year, the entire class would read out transcripts of the chat he had that weekend. We made a play out of it. It was an obscene, terrible, vile thing to do to him. Not sure where he is now. Hopefully not still scarred by this. Story 30. I made a girl cry in class during high school because I noticed she was freaking out, hyperventilating, and grunting during a test. I wanted to slide her my answers since I had studied extensively. She refused to look and turned away. I foolishly thought she couldn't see it, so I pushed the paper farther to her when the teacher wasn't looking. After the test was over, I saw her crying her eyes out, staring at me with such intensity, mixing anger with dread. Her look basically screamed, "What is your problem? Leave me alone. Look at what you did to me." I realized she was terrified of cheating, and I was forcing that upon her. I panicked and tried to apologize, but I was so shaken that I kept stuttering. We lost contact since she understandably avoided me for the rest of high school. I wish I could apologize to her formally ever since, because the look on her face that day is burned into my head.